You are loved by so many other people in your life. And, life is going to get hard and you're going to struggle. There's going to be that grief and there's going to be that joy. And you're going to question a lot. Am I really loved? So just keep coming back to that you are loved. But then in the same vein, you're capable of loving.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate Bryan, and I'm really excited to be back here for another week. I'm the host of the One Girl Revolution podcast and founder of our nonprofit, One Girl Revolution. One Girl Revolution is a multimedia platform, a podcast, and a nonprofit dedicated to highlighting the stories of inspiring women and girls who are changing the world through their lives. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. We're on YouTube at One Girl Revolution, and you can find all of our podcast episodes, videos, social media links, and so much more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I welcome Hannah Gregory, Program Director for the Neighbors Project. The Neighbors Project is a community program designed to connect neighbors who care with families who need support. The Neighbors Project sparked out of Hannah and her husband Josh's foster care journey and their journey with grief. Through their own journey through life, Josh and Hannah came to the realization that oftentimes the most powerful gift we can give another person is our loving presence. Their hope is that one friendship, one meal, one neighbor at a time can transform the world. Josh and Hannah are foster parents and community advocates near Detroit who have a passion for seeing families thrive together. They are fierce advocates for reunification within the child welfare system and for empowering people, not systems, to do the good work of caring for and loving their neighbors. Hannah joins the One Girl Revolution podcast to share her own life journey. She talks about losing her mom and her own journey through grief, her own journey through life. She talks about life with her husband, Josh, their foster care journey, how the Neighbors Project came to be. She talks about their incredible work and where they hope to go from here. Hannah will inspire you, encourage you, and empower you through her own story. I'm so honored to have been able to sit down in person with Hannah, and I'm so excited to share her story with you. So without further ado, here's Hannah. Hannah, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you here to talk about the Neighbors Project and all this great work that you're doing, and you're getting ready to launch a lot of really exciting things. But before we get into that, I want to ask you, who is a One Girl Revolution in your life? Who's a woman or girl that's inspired you?
This might sound a little cliche. I'm sure a lot of people answer this way, but it's my mom. She literally made it possible for me to be here, but more than that, she just loved us so well and shaped me into the woman that I am. And my sister and I talk about this often because she always wanted to be a teacher, and she never followed through with it. She stayed home with us and worked jobs so she could be with us, but and we kind of always felt sad, like, oh, she never got to do the thing that she wanted to do. But we talk about it all the time, like she was the best teacher that we ever had. And so I think she's the one person that's made the biggest revolution in my life.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Moms are such a powerful force in the world, and I don't feel like they get enough credit a lot of times.
They don't. And you don't know until you're too old to
right?
It's not until you're in your 30s where you're like, my mom was right about everything.
Yeah. And we need more than just Mother's Day, right? Like Mother's Day, I feel like we all shower our moms, but it's true.
Yeah.
Moms deserve to be celebrated every single day, and they're such a powerful force in the world. So I want to talk more about your life. So I want to rewind to your early life, and we can talk more about your mama or whatever you want to talk about. But tell me a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and just a little bit about your life and what's led you to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm born and raised in Michigan. My husband and I were married in 2012, and we just had our first biological daughter, and she's almost 7 months old. So we're enjoying that new stage. My life has certainly turned out differently than I thought that it would. I'm sure lots of people would say that. But it's been really good to just go along the journey and figure out, what was I made to do and what am I supposed to be doing with my life and my family. And so I graduated and I went to school in Minneapolis to become a student pastor. And so for the last almost 10 years now, that's been one of my primary jobs is ministering to teenagers, middle schoolers, high schoolers. And that's been really great. I also work full time at a nonprofit. I do marketing and I've learned so much, really enjoyed that. And in the last 3 to 4 years, there's really just been this shift of passions and new assignments and new things that are rising to the surface. And so I've really learned to just chase what kind of brings that spark. Like I know you've had another guest talk about.
One thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, Hannah, is how we often try to control our lives. Like we are so, I know I do it every single day where I'm trying to control how my day is going to go and it never goes how I want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is when you actually just kind of let go, that's when the real magic happens. That's when all the great things happen. And I know that so much of your life is like when you've actually let go and just been present with people. I know all the young people that you've worked with through the years, they've impacted your lives and your life and you've impacted their lives in ways that you never could have imagined. But that's really in the letting go. The power is in the letting go.
Absolutely. And there's so much beauty that comes when we let go of that need to control. And a lot of it is fear, right? If we think that if we let go of that control, which really we don't have control. Like we don't have control of anything. Like
Right.
we have control over what we eat and how we react to things and what outfit we pick out for the day, but not much else beyond that. Like so much of life is how we react to things, how we respond to things, how we treat people. And so I've really tried to just put energy into, instead of making things perfect, like I'm an Enneagram 1 type A, like in some of the worst ways, and I'm realizing this about myself. And it's been a process to say, okay, it can't be perfect and you can't do all the things even though you want to do all the things, and you can't control the outcomes of all these things that are happening to you or around you, but you can choose to have joy even in those really difficult moments, and you can choose to be a light to other people. And those are two things that I can always control. And so making that a priority, I guess, instead of spending so much time being anxious about all the things that didn't go the way that I planned. And in that, there's been a lot of freedom to, like you said, just be present and enjoy your life for what it is, not what you wanted it to be or not what it could be, because then you miss it and it's gone.
One thing that you can't control, and I know you and your husband are a great example of this, is foster care and the foster system. I have a lot of friends that are either going through the training to become foster parents, or maybe they're fostering kids right now. You and your husband ended up making that jump and arms wide open, because you can't control when you get connected with a child, what age they are, anything about their background. You just have to be arms wide open and welcome a child into your home. What made you and your husband want to get into foster care to start?
I thought that would be an easy question to answer, but I'm struggling because a lot of things in my life, I can remember that moment of like, oh, I learned about this, and then it sparked this idea, and it kind of, started the journey of let's go down this road. Foster care was not like that. It was one of those things where, and I hopefully people will understand how this feels, but I can't not do that thing. It's less of, what am I going to do and how am I going to do it? It was just like a physical, spiritual, tangible thing. I can't not do this. This is the thing that I was made to do. This is the thing that I have to do. And I didn't even have all the pieces. I didn't have the information. I didn't know the ins and outs of it. And it's a funny story actually, because I was thinking about it, and I was afraid to talk to my husband because I'm like, he's never going to go for it. And simultaneously he was having the same thoughts. And so I think it was Thanksgiving morning. We were driving to our family's house for dinner, and we were stopped at a red light, and I just blurted out, like, I think that we're supposed to be foster parents. And he starts crying, and I'm like, what's wrong? You really don't want to do it? And he's like, I've been thinking about this. I've been praying about this. And I'm like, no way. So we're like just driving, both of us bawling, just talking about how we had such this just that feeling of it's like the light coming on. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah.
This is what we're supposed to do. And every step of the way, even when things were hard and even when we couldn't control anything, you know, we were able to come back to that center point of, yes, this is really hard, but we can't not do this. And there's so much joy and beauty in it too, that I think having the right perspective makes those things, just makes it not easy, but more possible to navigate those difficult times.
I know in the world there are so many misconceptions about foster care and the foster care system. And thankfully, I saw a documentary recently called Foster. I don't know if you've seen it. I feel like there are more discussions more than ever about foster care, the foster care system, children who are in the foster care system. There are beginning to be more resources for children in the foster care system and their foster families. I know there are some things that you can't share, right? Like you can't share names or specifics, but what has your experience been like? And what are some things that you might want people who are listening to know about foster care?
Right. Oh man, how much time do we have?
I know we'll have to do a whole series on foster care at some point.
Right.
But.
We'll do our mini series.
Yeah.
So my experience, I'll just put this out there, is not as extensive as some. I know some foster parents who have, they've parented and helped, 20, 30, 40 families and kids. And that's incredible to me. But we have been foster parents for 3 years, a little over 3 years now. And we've had our first foster daughter came to live with us the week before Christmas. And she lived with us for over a year and a half, longer than she had been alive when we first became her parents. So, and she was reunified with her mom, and we got to be a part of that. And that was just gas on the fire. It was the greatest thing to be a part of. Not the case for everyone, but in this situation, it was, to me, all the best things that foster care can be. And we've been able to do that again with our foster son, who came and stayed for a few months, then went to a family member, and he's back home with his dad right now. So we've seen a lot of the different side of that. And the foster care community is growing, and it's a great thing to see. There's extra support, there's extra community for foster parents and kinship parents, and even some of those reunified families. But I think the hill that I'm going to die on is that I want people to know about foster care is that it's not about building your family. It's not about adding 1 or 2 or 3, or really not about you gaining at all. It's about giving. And it's not about getting a child for your family. It's about giving yourself so that child can be with their family. And it's hard. It's really hard to do that because we're programmed, right, in society, and I think even in some of our makeup we want the fruit of what we're doing, right? Parents who have young kids or older kids, anybody who's been a parent, they know, okay, on those hard days, I'm pushing through because later on I'll see the fruit of this. But now imagine doing that and you don't ever get to see what happens. You don't ever get to see what comes of that child. You don't ever get to see how they've overcome their trauma or how they've grown. You don't ever really get to see the fruit of what you're giving your time and your love and your energy to. And that can be really hard. So I think there has to be a humility in it. And I would just say to anyone who's considering foster care, learn from people who have been in foster care or have had kids in foster care, because it will change your perspective. We all live in a bubble and we have our own way of viewing things. And that's usually the way that is most comfortable and most beneficial for us. But when we choose to step into the world of child welfare, it's a choice to lay down those preferences. It's a choice to say, it's not about me. It's about another family. It's about another family's future. And I'm just a word on the page. I'm not the whole story.
That transitions me into the Neighbors Project. But before we get into that, I want to ask you, you wrote this really beautiful post about your mom. You lost your mom to cancer in 2019. And I think it embodies some of what you were saying about foster care and what I know from my friends who are involved in the foster care system. You wrote this really beautiful Mother's Day post, and I'll link it in the show notes so people can read it. But your mom had been diagnosed with cancer, and so you're reflecting on that. But it also, I think, really embodies what you go through as a foster parent. So you wrote, "As the world celebrates the powerful women in this world who have given them life, I feel simultaneous grief and joy. Grief because my sweet mother is fighting a battle for her life. Joy because I have never seen her more alive and full of faith than she is right now. Grief because as I sit and snuggle our first foster daughter, who has made me a mama, my heart is breaking knowing her mother sits somewhere today with empty arms. Joy because I think it will be the last time they celebrate this day apart." I just think that this duality, and you talk about that more in this post, and it was so powerful to read. I just think that it really captured what you're experiencing with your own mom. And I know that those feelings never go away. You still feel that. But that just embodies also what you feel as a foster parent. You know, there's joy and grief. And you probably could say that even about being a parent, that there are always going to be these moments of joy and grief.
Gosh, isn't that just life?
Mm-hmm.
It's
right?
just life. I think that's been the biggest lesson I've learned over these last few years, is just how important it is to learn to hold grief and joy at the same time. Because if you think about it, there is no situation or experience in life, hardly ever, where those things are separated. And, you know, anyone who's lost someone can understand that, right? Everything that is hard or difficult, that grief is just multiplied. And anything that is joyful and beautiful and exciting is now bittersweet because that person's not there. And so, that's been a huge, I guess, mantra for me these last few years, is, and really just amplified by everything that we experienced in losing my mom. And, you know, as I've shared with you before, my mom passed, or our daughter came to live with us. And then 1 week later, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. My mom passed. And then 1 month later, our daughter left to go be reunified with her mom. And so all of that connection and just, it was heavy. It was a lot to bear. And I was constantly thinking about my mom and her mom and my role as this kind of stand-in mother to her. And so still on Mother's Day, you know, I think about this duality of there are so many women everywhere that are holding other women's babies, and they are their moms for the moment, but they're not forever. And being a parent myself, I think, you know, not having my own child, it's made me feel so much more connected to the parents of the kids that we've had in our home, because I can only imagine what it was like for them to go to bed one night and not know where their kids are. How scary, how sad for a parent to have to go through that. And, you know, I've held our daughter and thought about our foster daughter's mom and her being together. And so there's just, it's just such a mix of grief and joy, and understanding that just because you have grief doesn't mean that you can't have joy. And I think there's a really beautiful thing that happens when you give something up and there's that grief and that loss. There's this beautiful thing where you now have this incredible capacity for joy that wasn't there before. And I've experienced that. I would have rather not gone through those things, but at the end of the day, you know, there has been growth and there has been joy, and I see the fruit of the labor, I guess, if that's the right term.
Yeah, but you're so right. Life is full of so many dark moments and so many difficulties. And I loved what you said just about holding grief and joy at the same time. And sometimes that's life, right? Like you're just walking with both grief. There are difficult things happening in your life, but then beautiful things are happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And again, something we can't control, but I think we can control how we deal with whatever is laid before us.
Absolutely.
Have you subscribed to the One Girl Revolution podcast? We have new episodes coming out every week, and you don't want to miss them. Subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now. Let's talk about the Neighbors Project, because I'm so excited. You're doing so much to get ready to really launch this. So just for people that are listening, we're kind of you're in the beginning stages, but I just think it's such an incredible concept, and what you're going to be doing is just going to change the world. So how did the Neighbors Project spark? You told me a really beautiful story before we started recording. So I'd love for you to share with people, how did this idea for the Neighbors Project spark?
Yeah, absolutely. So being foster parents, we personally felt how isolating that could be. We were very lucky to have family and friends and church members and community members that came alongside us and supported us, but we also recognize like that is not the case for everyone. And then on top of that, going through just 2 really, really hard years of my mom's illness and just the grief and loss after she passed and the fallout from that, which anyone who's lost someone, it changes everything. And going through that and seeing just the people in our lives that were so solid and so present and supportive and real, whether you were in those joyful moments or in those grief-filled moments, just there for us. And so I had started thinking about, we know the need that we all have for community, for relationship, for people and presence. And being involved in the church and being involved in the nonprofit world, we also know there's so many people that want to help. There's so many people that say, listen, I have extra time, I have extra money, I have extra energy and love to give. And so many people just really struggle with where to direct that. There's nonprofits that literally have waiting lists for people who want to volunteer, because there's just, we struggle to match people and connect people. And so I had started to think about, what if there was a bridge that we could build between these families and individuals that are isolated and struggling, facing a hard season, and these volunteers, these givers that want to give of themselves and of their time and want to love on people and just be a friend. We just need to help them find each other. And so I secretly was thinking about this, and through some odd internet miracle, I guess, came across Families Together, which you've talked with Hope, based in Colorado, and looking at everything that her organization stood for and was doing, it just, this light came on, like, that's the thing that I've been trying to build but didn't know how to build it. And so we got connected with Hope, and we shared some of our ideas and our vision and our dreams for the communities that we're close to and that we want to have an impact on. And it just was this immediate, really great marriage of their mission, what they've put to work, and how they've seen it impact families. And then some of the extra layers that we want to add to that to serve families in our area.
So for people that are listening, what is the Neighbors Project? Tell me about the mission of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Neighbors Project is at the simplest level, we connect neighbors who care with families who need support. And so neighbors, which are volunteers, commit to a 6-month partnership or match, I guess, with a family who feels isolated and in need of support. And it's a very low level of commitment on purpose, because we want people to be present and consistent and not burn out, which is also a very common thing. So neighbors commit to, for 6 months, I'm going to drop off a meal or a care package for a family that feels isolated, and I'm going to build a friendship with them through messages or letters or texts or however that looks. And that's it. I don't want to say that's it, because it's very powerful and it's very important, but it's so doable and it's so achievable. And I think that's what makes it just really possible to expand and to grow, and for someone to say, you know what, I can do that. I have a couple extra hours every week that I can give to love on someone, or to drop off a coffee, or to make a meal for that family that is fostering or just lost a loved one, whatever the case might be. And so basically the Neighbors Project serves as that matchmaker, if you will, building that bridge between the neighbors that want to help and don't know how to find the right avenue for that, and the families who really need the support and feel isolated, but maybe don't know how to ask.
It kind of goes back to the olden days, like our parents. I remember my mom telling stories about when she was little, the neighbors would show up with a meal when they had a baby or
Yeah.
different things like that. And we've lost sight of that. I think one of the positives of everything that we've gone through with the pandemic, with COVID, is that it's kind of brought some of that back. I think a lot of neighbors were kind of checking in on one another. Or if they knew
Mm-hmm.
that there was an elderly neighbor, they kind of were checking in on them, just making sure that they didn't feel isolated. But
Yeah.
we also know on the flip side, so many people were isolated and they felt isolated and they were sheltering in place alone.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is really establishing that community and making people feel like, and it's so simple, like what you said, it's like so simple. Look at the people around you, look at your neighbors. And a lot of times we just don't know our neighbors in the way that they used to years and years ago. But you're reestablishing that to support one another. And it just is so simple. Writing somebody a card, getting them a
Mm-hmm.
coffee, calling and checking in on them, making them a meal. If you have a crock pot, making like a little bit extra to deliver to somebody. It's
Absolutely.
so simple. We all can do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like you said earlier, we don't know how to do. We don't know what to do. We want to do something. We might have a little money. We might have a little time. We might have a talent that we want to share, but we don't know what to do. And so you're really partnering all those different things.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things I really love about the Neighbors Project too, and what Hope and her team are doing, is that um, it's support and it's service, but there's so much dignity to it, because it's not, no family really wants charity. No family really wants to feel like, oh, we're the charity case on the block. We need help again. We need, but we all need that support, and we all need someone to be generous with themselves and their presence and their time. And so what I love about this program is that it's not, yes, there's a meal involved, but it's not about the meal. It's not about the stuff. It's about um, building that connection, that friendship, that relationship. I'm another person and I want to be a part of your life because I see value in you and your family. And I just want you to know that I see you and you matter to me. And I think the potential for that worldview can shift things.
So I know you're in the beginning stages, but for people that are listening, what is your kind of rollout plan? I know that you're kind of laying things out. Where do you go from here? I guess is a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we have a lot of our fundraising done, and we have some great training with the Families Together team from Colorado. So, we're going to start with a group of probably 15 families, and it'll be some sample sizes that we're going to have some families who have been impacted by child welfare. So, foster families, kinship families, Our Heart, which is those reunified families who are together again with their children, and then a few families who have just been, well, not been, but are in hard seasons, whether that be the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, some kind of crisis, or just a life circumstance that leads them to really feel isolated and needing that support. And so we're going to match those families with those neighbors, and we'll complete our first round as we finish up, our networking and our fundraising. And then the plan is to keep doing that for eternity. So
Yeah. Continuing to grow the network. And I'm sure that it's all going to be word of mouth too, or a lot of it will be word of mouth where, you might pair two people up or two families up, and then that will grow because other people will see what you're doing and they want to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if Hope mentioned this when you spoke with her, but they have some statistics that have come, or stats that have come out from the program that they've been running for the last 2 years. And so in Colorado, they surveyed all their families and their neighbors, and they were able to see that 91% of those matches were more than just, I'm dropping off food. It grew into this deep friendship. But then even beyond that, 80% of those matches said, because it's only a 6-month commitment. So 80% of those neighbors said, after our commitment is over and technically we're off the hook, for lack of a better word, we're going to continue being in this family's life. We're going to continue supporting them, and we're going to be, and again, not charity, not handout, community and connection, and just just being together, that proximity and sharing life. And so to me, that's what I'm most excited about. Like the beginning months are going to be great, but what I'm excited to see is what happens after that first 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when the technical, commitment is over and people are left to choose for themselves. Am I going to go out of my way to help these families? Am I going to go out of my way to widen my circle a little bit and be with people that maybe are different than my family, different than my life experience, so that I may learn from them and they from me? And that's what I get really geeked about, just seeing, because that's what's going to make the change. It's not necessarily, in the day to day, those 6 months to that family, that's going to be really life giving. But what's great is longevity and consistent relationship. And so that's what I'm excited to see. Month 7 is when we're going to be able to check in and say, okay, is this having the impact that we want it to have? Are we seeing neighbors and families creating these beautiful systems of support?
There are so many things as you're speaking. I'm thinking about all the different things that are happening in the world, all the dark things that are happening. And I mean, a lot of us versus them, division, people are being torn apart, whether it's because of politics or whatever is going, all the different things that people are thinking about right now that are going on in the world. And I just can see the Neighbors Project being such a transformative thing. When you're raising kids, I can only imagine what this impact would be on the next generations too, bringing children together, bringing families together in different ways. Yeah, maybe like you might be in a different zip code than whoever your family that you get paired with, but like what an example to the kids on both sides of the spectrum, and how that can change our discussions about race, faith, background, upbringing. It just can open up so many dialogues and discussions where we'll see one another as the same. We're all human at the end of the day. And I think a lot of the issues that I see in the world, that we see in the world, could be changed by something like this. And that's why I'm so excited about what you're doing, and just really bringing people together and bringing families together. And it's the real true human experience.
Yeah. I mean, that's the heart behind it, really. And a couple years ago, we started having these big conversations about, because I've had to change to make this a reality in my own life, because it came to the point where we realized, okay, we're speaking about community and open door policy, and we had this saying of, less walls, longer tables, right? We don't want to build walls that separate us from people. We want to have a long table where anyone can come and sit with us and feel like they're a part of our family. And it led to some difficult conversations, like, okay, we say that, but do we really mean that? Do we walk it out? Do we act that out in our day-to-day life? And everything that you're saying about the division and the separation, all the things that people can argue about and disagree about, at the end of the day, everybody has to sit down to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Might look different, might taste different, might happen at a different time, but at the end of the day, everyone sits down for a meal somewhere. And so I think there's this really powerful thing that happens when we learn to share that center point of our life. The Neighbors Project is multifaceted in how it works, but it's very simple. And, Hope and Abby have this saying that, we can't fix everything, but we can fix dinner. And I think sometimes we all feel that kind of like the world is ending feeling of like everything is burning around us, and there's all these just cultural and societal things that are happening that make us feel like that gloom and doom type thing. We can't fix everything. We can't fix foster care. We can't fix, the unjust systems that people have to deal with. We can't fix poverty. We can't fix all those things, certainly not with this little baby program. But if we don't start somewhere, then nothing's going to change. And so if we can all be responsible for our circle to just say, I'm making a longer table, I'm widening the circle, I'm tearing down the walls that have kept me separated from the people around me. And just remember, like you said, that we have so much more in common than we do. We have so much more in common than we have things to argue about and disagree about. And so, a 6-month commitment to drop off a meal, it's not going to fix everything, but it could fix something. And we have to let that something be enough Maybe it's so that mom feels like she can make it to the next day. Maybe it's so that that person who is grieving and literally cannot even think of the next day is able to have a friendship with someone who says, listen, you're going to be okay. You're going to make it to this next day. Or at the very least, tonight, you don't have to worry about dinner. I have your family covered. Just those simple things that give dignity and humanity and connection. And it's so small, but it's also so magnetic, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing that my long-term goal for the Neighbors Project is that, yes, it'll continue to be a program, but I'm hoping that neighbors and families who have gone through this program, been a part of it, that it becomes a lifestyle, that it becomes, this is how I live my life, because I want to live my life this way. I want to live as someone who notices people. I want to live as someone who is not just confined to my social circle and my bubble and what's comfortable to me. And I want people to come into contact with me and know that they're loved, not because I told them, but because I showed them. And so my hope is that people who have come through this program, there's that beautiful like multiplication effect. You've been loved well. And so then you go and you love well. A neighbor learns, okay, wow, I was in proximity with a family that was so different than my worldview, and I learned so much and I grew so much and I made great friends, and this was such a beautiful experience. What if I live my entire life this way with all the people that I come into contact with? And then family as well. I've received this generosity from a neighbor. What if I then for lack of a better word, pay that forward, and just the multiplication of that, of, maybe they won't stay in the program forever, but if we can see neighbors and families growing in their capacity to love people well, and to support people without there being strings attached and without there being judgment, I think that's what's really going to change the world more than the program. It's the people that go and then take what the program is about and make it a part of their lives.
I agree. And I can't wait to see the families that maybe need support. Maybe they're the family that's being supported or the one that is receiving on the receiving end. I can't wait to see those families turn the tables and then become the families that are then
amazing.
Supporting other people. I am sure that's going to happen. And then even the children, of both families, like it's setting such an important lesson to kids too, to see that. I know my parents were always had open doors at like all holidays or even like family dinners. Whenever we would do them, they were like, hey, bring your friends. Oh, they're exchange students at whatever college that couldn't go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas. And we need to see more of that in the world where it's like, okay, let's bring people together and let's bring kids and get them to experience different cultures and different backgrounds and have discussions and music. And we need more of that. And so that's really what the Neighbors Project, I know, I can feel it. That's what it's going to bring.
I appreciate that. I'm excited because you're excited.
Donate to One Girl Revolution's nonprofit organization to help us continue our work, highlighting inspiring women and girls that are changing the world through their lives, promoting their work and their organizations, and building a powerful and positive force out in the world dedicated to empowering women, their voices, and their stories. Donate at onegirlrevolution.com/donate. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com/donate. And so for people that are listening, first of all, I want everybody who's listening to get involved. So people can obviously sign up to become a part of the Neighbors Project, but also it's so simple. Look around your neighborhood. And if there's somebody that, you might think they might need just a hello or a coffee or write them a little card, that was one thing that we were really promoting with One Girl during COVID is look at the people around you. Sometimes it's your neighbor that needs the most. And what does it take to throw a little bit more food into a crock pot and deliver a meal? Or if you're baking cookies, make some cookies and deliver them. And it just can brighten someone's day. And as you were talking about like how a meal can change someone's day or change someone's life, we all know the feeling when you sit down with like comfort food, like mashed potatoes and turkey or whatever your comfort food is.
It's close to dinner. Be careful.
I know. It changes your life. Like it changes your day. You could be having the worst day ever and then you just get a home cooked meal. Everybody knows what that feels like.
And to know that the person who made that meal cares about you
Mm-hmm.
and went out of their way. This is why moms are the
Yeah,
best.
right?
Back to moms.
Shout out to moms.
Right. And I would encourage people. This has been something that I have kind of running through my head a lot, is just practice the art of noticing. Just notice. I think this is good in a family, right? This is good in marriages and friendships, but outside of your circles, practice noticing. Notice people. Notice what you think they might need, what they're going through, what would just bless them and give them life and make them feel loved. Pay attention. And I think that if we can start with that simple thing, I think the goodness and people will rise up to meet that need, to say, wow, I noticed that, and there's something in me that wants to help, wants to fix it, wants to be with that person, wants to show that person that they're not alone. And at the heart of it, that's what Neighbors is. It's a tangible way to say you're not alone. Yes, the season you're in right now, it's really hard. Yes, you are involved in a system that is unjust and corrupt and broken and messed up. But listen, we got you. You're not alone. You're going to be okay. And those are simple words, right? But there's so much power in just understanding that you don't have to face something by yourself, and that you don't. I would also add to that you can support people without knowing everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's another difficult thing in the foster care world, is that, we can't share our kids' stories because they're theirs.
Yep.
And they're not ours to share. People do, but there's a lot about the foster care journey as a parent that you can't share. And honestly, a lot of it that you probably don't want to share. And most of it you don't even know. And so it can be hard for people to support families that are involved in child welfare, because there's that innate sense in us, like, we want to know why are they in care? Well, what happened to their parents? Why do they have that behavior? Were they abused? There's just all those questions. But I think across the board, foster care or not, we need to be comfortable and willing and able to support people without knowing every detail of their story, because at the end of the day, they are worthy of love and support. And so if someone tells us that they need it, we don't get to ask questions. And I think that it can be really detrimental. If I go to someone and I say, listen, I just really need someone, I need a friend, I need someone to listen, and that person wants to know all the details of something that I don't feel like sharing, that doesn't feel like a safe space. Or someone says, hey, it's really been a hard week and I'm really struggling. Is there any way that you could drop off a meal? And we say, well, yeah, I want to sit down, but I want to talk about all the ins and outs of this case and what's happening with this child. That's not really supportive. That's more for an individual's personal benefit. And so what would it look like if we were able to support people without knowing the whole story, without, honestly, and even without even getting a thank you? How many times have we done something nice for someone and then be like, they didn't even recognize that. They didn't even say anything. They didn't text me, thank you, nothing. But that's not the point,
Right.
So can we commit to supporting people who feel isolated and are struggling, knowing that it might not be reciprocated, and that's okay. And this is foster care in a nutshell, right? Because it's, can I commit to loving a child that I know is going to leave? Can I commit to praying for and encouraging and loving a mom or a dad who has made some bad choices, even though I know that they're not going to notice or they might not even care? Can I commit to just pouring that kindness and love out on them and letting them decide what to do with that? And it's that radical view of just, we don't need to get anything in return. And we don't need to be able to track the trajectory of all the good things that we've done. That's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to be present and in the moment and to give what we're able to give. And the rest of that is out of our hands. Again, we can't control it, but at the end of the day, I want to be able to say I did everything that I could to love the people that crossed my path. And that's what I want the Neighbors Project to be.
Yeah, well, it's going to be that. And I can't wait for people who are listening to get involved, because I know that our listeners are going to want to get involved. And just at a very baseline level, like you said, notice people. We notice people. I think we're all tempted so quickly to want to know everything. Or sometimes we do notice things. Like you might notice something about your neighbors, like, oh, their dad isn't coming around. Like the mom is now a single mom. do we do anything? Sometimes we just have to act as well. Like I was thinking about that as you were talking. It's great when people will ask us like, hey, I'm struggling. Can you make a meal? But I know even from my friends who have had babies, they never want to ask anybody, but they're struggling.
I never
And
did.
so, yeah. And so, what if we could notice the people and instead of making assumptions or gossiping about what's going on with our neighbors or whose car is parked there or whose car isn't parked there, what if we just noticed and we were like, I'm just going to do something? I'm going to do something kind for them. I don't know what's going on. I don't need to know. I know myself. Like, I love gossip magazines, but and I feel like sometimes life can be that way. But I actually don't really need to know anything that's going on with like celebrity culture. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help anyone else.
Yeah.
It probably is detrimental to them. Most of it's not even true. So, what if we, as a culture, as a world, as individuals, could just make a commitment to do like notice people and then do a kind thing? Like, imagine if everybody did one kind thing every single week. It doesn't take that much time. Make a couple extra cookies, deliver groceries to a homeless shelter or whatever is going on. And so that's why I'm so passionate and so excited about what you're doing with the Neighbors Project, because I think it's going to be so transformative, not to cities, not to states, but actually to the world.
That means a lot.
And I can't wait to continue to
no
follow.
pressure, right?
No pressure. I can't wait to continue to follow. One Girl obviously is going to be supporting you guys in any way that we possibly can to promote what you're doing, to encourage people to get involved. For people that are listening, obviously in their own everyday lives, they can do kind things for their neighbors. They can be the embodiment of the Neighbors Project. But for people that are listening that want to support your work, they want to get involved, what can they do? Obviously, they can follow you on social media, they can donate, but talk to me a little bit about what people who are listening can do to support your efforts and get involved.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Anyone who wants to get involved, you can go to our website, theneighborsproject.net. And this is just for the Michigan arm of the program, but you'll be able to see there how you can sign up to either refer a family that needs support and needs a neighbor, or sign up yourself for a 6-month commitment to be a neighbor and support an isolated family. There's also links there to learn about how we serve, learn about foster care, learn about why the Neighbors Project exists, as well as to be able to donate. And so we'd love for you to visit the website, or you can follow us on Instagram at theneighborsproject.mi.
And I will post those links in the show notes so people can easily find them. We'll obviously tag you on social media when this episode goes up. Hannah, you're such an inspiring woman, and I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast. I'm so excited to stay in touch with you, and I can't wait to collaborate. I have so many ideas. I know you have ideas for ways that we can work together on things, but if you could get to the very root of why you do what you do, whether it be with getting involved in foster care, the way you live your life, starting the Neighbors Project, what would you say that root is? What's the thing that really drives you to do what you do?
Well, I started with a cliche answer, so I'll end with the cliche answer. It's love. And I don't mean our, like a Hallmark social media version of love, but I mean that tangible thing that we were made for. I that's why I do what I do. And that's why I don't do the things that I don't do, because I want to live a life of love. And I want to operate from that, standing in that position at all times. And so that's really the heart behind how I want to treat people. It's the heart behind, the ministry that I've given the last 10 years of my life to. It's the heart behind writing and everything that I create. It's the heart behind opening our home to kids that are going to leave, which is so full of love, but is so hard. And it's the heart behind the Neighbors Project, because we all need that. We all need to be loved and to feel like we don't have to earn it. Right. And I don't, I feel this way in parenting, right? Like, we don't ever want our kids to feel like they have to earn our love or accomplish things to have our love. And so the root of that, just, I guess, that worldview and that position is just like, everybody, we're all so loved, and we all need to know that. And so I guess I've made that my personal mission.
Yeah, you are the embodiment of it, girl. You are the embodiment of love. And I'm so inspired by you and everything that you're doing. Before I let you go, this has been so amazing and I can't wait to continue to follow and support your work. But before I let you go, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
Ooh, okay. So in light of what I just gave as my answer, I think I'm going to steal, I'm going to plagiarize. I'm going to steal an answer from the original neighbor, right? Do you know who I'm going to say?
I have an idea, but you go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Rogers. Is that what you're going to say?
No.
Okay. Maybe not the original neighbor, but in my mind.
He is the original neighbor. Now that I think about it, now that I actually place myself in my life, he is the original neighbor that I had.
Yeah. So we have a quote of Fred Rogers outside of our daughter's room. And it says, "You are loved and capable of loving." And I come back to that for myself, but I come back to that as, I guess, just a call to girls and women everywhere that you are loved and you're capable of loving. And oh gosh, ladies, like, measure your life by that. Measure your life by that and nothing else. The world will tell you that you have to be popular, that you have to be beautiful, that you have to accomplish things. But before you are anything, before you've worked to earn it, before you've achieved anything, you are loved. You are loved by God. You are loved by me. I don't even know you, and I love you. You are loved by so many other people in your life. And, life is going to get hard and you're going to struggle. There's going to be that grief and there's going to be that joy. And you're going to question a lot. Am I really loved? So just keep coming back to that you are loved. But then in the same vein, you're capable of loving. You are so capable of affecting change in the world and in other people simply by how you love. And if at the end of the day, no matter what crazy things are happening or what you've gotten done or not gotten done or gotten wrong or gotten right, it doesn't matter if you can measure your life by that. Remember, I am loved and I am capable of loving. And I can measure my life by that. So that's what I want my daughter to know that. I want her to wake up and know that she is so loved by nothing that she's done or could ever do, and that it won't change. And I want girls and women to know that. And then I want them to feel empowered and, just so capable to take that love out into the world and do what they were made to do. And that's love.
Yeah, women are so powerful and resilient and have come through so much. And I think that women have so much power to love people in such a particular way. And we need to see that in ourselves and encourage that in others and our sisters and our friends. So that was so powerful. Now I want to get the Mr. Rogers quote on my wall and see that every day.
Go to Etsy.
Hannah, this was so awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And thank you for all the great work that you do.
Absolutely. You too. Thank you so much for having me on.
And I can't wait to see what the future holds for us, because there are going to be so many collaborations coming up. I can
we'll
feel
be
it.
back.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com.